The silence of the prison deck was not empty. It breathed. A low, almost subsonic resonance thrummed through the alloy ribs of the station. The kind of sound that could not be heard so much as felt, a vibration in the teeth, in the bones behind the eyes. The lights were dimmed to emergency amber, their glow smeared across the curved walls like old bruises. Somewhere deep within the station's core, a coolant pump stuttered, caught itself, and continued its tired rhythm. Lieutenant Aaron Cade stood alone at the end of the corridor. His shadow stretched thin and warped by the curvature of the hull. He had stopped counting the days. Time, out here, had lost its edges. The prison station designation, Axiom Verge Detention. A ray hung in geosynchronous orbit above a nameless red dwarf. Far from shipping lanes, far from rescue, far from relevance. It had once been a diplomatic facility, back when humanity still believed negotiations could tame empires older than Earth's oceans. Now it was a forgotten knot of metal and secrets. Quietly rotting in the dark, Aaron flexed his gloved hand, feeling the microfractures in the exosuit servos respond with a half-second delay. The suit was old. Everything here was old, including him. Motion check, he muttered. More to hear a human voice than out of necessity. The suit complied. Barely his helmet HUD, flickered oxygen stable. Radiation with intolerances, heart rate elevated but controlled. The system still recognized him as alive, which felt increasingly philosophical. He took one more step toward the containment vault and stopped, because something had changed. It was subtle, almost nothing at all. But after months, maybe years of silence, his instincts had sharpened into something uncomfortable and precise. The hairs along his forearms lifted beneath the synth-weave undersuit. The containment field was humming. It wasn't supposed to. The vault housed specimen Theta 9, an alien royal captured during the collapse of the Valari Dominion. Officially, she was labeled a strategic asset. Unofficially, she was the reason this place still existed at all, and she was supposed to be asleep. Aaron swallowed. The transparent field at the center of the vault shimmered faintly, its surface rippling like heat haze. Within it, suspended in a cradle of null gravity restraints, was the alien princess. She was awake, her eyes long, faceted and luminous, were open, reflecting the amber lights like molten glass. Bioluminescent patterns traced slow, deliberate paths along her skin, pulsing in rhythms that made no sense to human biology. But what froze Aaron in place was not her appearance, it was the way she was. Looking at him not like a prisoner, not like an enemy, like a question, eh? Voice slipped into his mind without sound. Without warning, without permission, you walk like a man who has forgotten what touch feels like. Aaron gasped, staggering back a step, his hand flying to the neural dampener at the base of his skull. Impossible, he whispered. Telepathic output should be suppressed. The restraints hadn't changed, the field hadn't failed, and yet chains are only chains if both sides agree to them. The voice continued, velvet smooth and unbearably close. You have been alone for so long, Aaron Cade. Do you remember why you stayed? His name. She knew his name. Memories surged unbidden earths. Blue horizon. A promise he had made to someone whose face had begun to blur. The evacuation order he had disobeyed because someone had to stay behind and shut the station down properly, because someone had to guard her. I stayed because it was my duty, he said aloud. Though the words sounded thin in the vault, a ripple of light passed over her form. The alien equivalent of a smile. No, she corrected gently. You stayed because humans are afraid of endings. The station shuddered. Alarms bloomed red across his HUD. Overlapping warnings scrolling too fast to read. Structural stress. Power reroute. External signal detected. Aaron turned, heart pounding. What did you do? I woke up, she replied. The holographic map of the station flickered into existence beside him, corridors lighting up like veins. Entire sections were dark long dead. Others were coming alive for the first time since the war. Something was answering her. He backed away from the containment field, pulse roaring in his ears. Protocol screamed at him to initiate purge procedures to flood the vault with radiation, to erase the asset before it could become a catastrophe. But his hand hesitated over the controls, because beneath the alarms, beneath the fear, there was something else now filling the station. Presence unchained me. Human, she whispered, and the word slid through him with dangerous intimacy. Not sexual. Not yet, but charged with a promise of something deeper. I will teach you what your kind forgot when it learned how to survive alone. What? He breathed. How to conquer. Her gaze softened. Possibly. How to want without destroying. The external signal resolved. Multiple contacts. Ships not human, not. Valari, something older. Something that had been waiting. The station lights dimmed further, plunging the vault into near darkness, her bioluminescence now the brightest thing in the room. She drifted closer to the field's edge, restraints humming under unseen strain. They are coming for me, she said calmly. And when they arrive, this station will be dust. Aaron's throat tightened. Then why should I free you? Her eyes locked onto his, unblinking, unwavering. Because if you do not, she said, you will die having never been chosen. Silence fell again. But it was no longer empty. It was waiting. The waiting did not last. The first impact came as a distant tremor, too deep, too slow to be debris. The station's mass groaned, a sound like a mountain deciding whether it still wished to stand. Aaron braced himself against the bulkhead as the gravity fluctuated, his boots momentarily losing their magnetic grip before snapping back with a jarring clang. External contacts had closed to visual range. Whoever, whatever they were not broadcasting. Aaron forced himself to breathe. Slow, measured, panic would not keep him alive. Panic never had. He turned from the containment vault and broke into a controlled jog down the corridor, pulling up auxiliary feeds on his HUD as he moved. Camera nodes flickered online one by one, their lenses clouded with dust, micrometeor scarring, years of neglect. What they showed made his stomach hollow. The ships outside were not vessels in the human sense. They had no clean lines, no visible propulsion, no symmetry designed for efficiency or intimidation. They looked grown. Vast, overlapping shells of obsidian material, layered like fossilized petals. Light bent strangely around them, as if the universe itself hesitated to acknowledge their presence. Choir. The voice in his mind said, unbidden. Aaron nearly stumbled. You call them that? They called themselves something else, she replied. Once, before language became unnecessary, the corridor opened into the transit spine along, arcing tunnel that had once ferried diplomats and prisoners alike between sections of the station. Now it was a cathedral of abandonment. Emergency lights flickered along the floor, casting his shadow forward in broken fragments. Panels hung loose from the walls, wires exposed like nerves. How do you know they're coming for you? Aaron asked as he ran. A pause. Not silence, but consideration. Because I was never meant to be imprisoned, she said finally. I was meant to be hidden. The word settled heavily in his chest. Hidden from what? The station lurched again, harder this time. Somewhere aft, metal screamed as a structural brace finally gave way. Aaron adjusted course, diverting toward the reactor ring. If he was going to die here, he would at least understand why. As he moved deeper into the station, memories surfaced unbidden. The day he had volunteered for this assignment, fresh from the war, still believing that holding the line mattered more than going home. The commanders had spoken of honor, of vigilance, of humanity's responsibility now that it had survived its first interstellar extinction. Event, they had not spoken of loneliness. They had not spoken of standing watch over a being who could hear your thoughts and never once ask you to speak until now. The reactor ring was intact, but barely. Coolant vapor hung in the air like fog, glowing faintly in the emergency lighting. The central column thrummed with unstable energy. Containment fields stretched thin. Aaron slowed, boots echoing softly on the deck. The voice returned, closer now. Not louder, nearer. Do you know why your species frightened the galaxy, Aaron Cade? He snorted despite himself. We weren't exactly subtle. she said. You were incomplete, fragile, short-lived, and yet you endured horrors that erased civilizations 10 times older. You adapted not by becoming stronger, but by choosing each other. He stopped walking. No one chose me, he said quietly. The fog parted ahead. The observation chamber loomed into view, its wide viewport fractured but holding. Stars smeared across the glass like pale scars, and reflected faintly in that glass behind him was a glow that should not have been there. She was no longer in the vault. Aaron spun. Heart hammering, she stood a few meters away, her form now unrestrained. Gravity seeming to negotiate around her rather than impose itself. The bioluminescent patterns along her skin had shifted, reorganized into flowing sigils that hurt to look at for too long, like trying to remember a dream while still inside it. How his voice failed him. You never activated the purge, she said gently. That was the chain that mattered. He stared at her, taking in details he had never seen through the distortion of the containment field. She was taller than him, but not imposing. Her features were alien but coherent, shaped by an intelligence that valued elegance over domination. Her eyes held centuries in something like grief. You said you were a prisoner, he said. I was, she replied, of a choice I made. The station shuddered again, closer to catastrophic this time. Through the viewport, one of the obsidian vessels began to unfold, segments peeling back to reveal a core of impossible depth, a darkness that drank starlight. They're hailing us, Aaron said. Though no signal appeared on his HUD. They do not hail, she corrected. They remember. She moved closer, each step soundless. The air around her felt warmer, charged. Not threatening, but intimate in a way that made his pulse quicken despite the terror gnawing at him. Tell me, he said, forcing the words out. Tell me what you are. She studied him for a long moment, as if weighing the cost of truth. I am what remains when a species refuses to end, she said at last. The Valari did not die. We changed. We learned to shed bodies, to distribute thought, to exist as consensus rather than individuals. The choir, Aaron whispered. She nodded. I was the last who refused. I believed identity mattered, desire, choice, the things that make a life feel lived rather than merely continued. Her gaze softened again, and this time he felt it not as intrusion but as invitation. So they hid you, he said. They tried to erase me, she corrected. Your people intervened. They did not understand what I was, but they understood that I did not wish to disappear. Act. Station's alarms fell silent, not because the danger had passed, because the systems had finally given up. There. Going to consume this place? Aaron said. Assimilate everything, yes? And you. I can stop them. Hope flared, brief, dangerous. Then do it. She shook her head, slow and solemn. Not alone. The realization hit him like vacuum exposure. You need me? I need a species, she said. One that still believes survival should feel like something. Outside, the obsidian vessels began to synchronize, their cores aligning. Space itself seemed to tense. Aaron laughed softly, a sound halfway to a sob. You're asking a lot from a dying man on a dead station. She reached out, not touching him, not yet. Her hand hovered inches from his chest, warmth radiating through the suit. I am asking you to choose, she said, to remain human and become more, or to stay as you are and be remembered only as another silent watchman. Images flooded his mind, Earth's oceans. Laughter in a crowded transit hub, the weight of another person's hand in his. Things he had not allowed himself to miss. What happens if I say yes? He asked. Her voice dropped, resonant and honest. You will never be alone again. The obsidian cores flared. The station began to tear itself apart. Aaron closed his eyes and stepped forward.